Yes, I know it's almost football season, but the news does not stop for West Virginia men's basketball, as we've got some breaking news to share with you about the last spot on the roster now being full for 2025. And we also have the news that broke today about West Virginia's non-conference schedule for men's hoops. And we're going to talk about that in this episode. I'm going to tell you why I think it doesn't really line up great for West Virginia. And I'm going to explain my reasons why. And we'll do that right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. Well, I know it's August, and I know football's right around the corner, but man, basketball's still a thing, and coaches are still recruiting. They're still signing, or at least getting commitments from players. They're still recruiting players, and they have schedules to release, and that's what we're talking about in this episode of Couz's Corner. Thank you for joining the show. Please don't forget to hit the like button if you like the content. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is West Virginia finally filling their last roster spot for the 2025 season. The fans have asked about this, or talked about this rather, on social media for weeks. Coach Ross Hodge has been asked about it in press conferences for weeks by the media, and he's basically said, "Yeah, we're looking to fill the last spot." Well, they did that today, and I know some fans may not be happy. I'm sure some fans wanted them to get another big. But they filled the last roster spot. And to me, in another surprising move, they actually took a 2026 player who reclassified, the second one of this class that's done that, reclassified for 2025, this one being a player by the name of Evans Barning Jr. Evans Barning Jr. commits to WVU, according to Skylar Callahan over at SI, will reclassify to 2025. Friday afternoon, class of 2026 forward Evans Barning Jr., who's 6'8", 190 pounds, announced his commitment to West Virginia. Barning is planning to reclassify to the 2025 class and join the Mountaineers this upcoming season, taking the final roster spot. He recently averaged 8.8 points, 4.3 rebounds per game in the EYBL Peach Jam for Team Durant. His most notable performance was a 29-point output against the eventual champions, Brad Bill Elite. Head coach Ross Hodge told reporters back in late July that he was not dead set on adding another center, despite only having two on the roster. He was more concerned about getting the best player he could, regardless of position. There's a quote there from Hodge I'm not going to read. I'll leave a link to this article in the description box. You guys can go check it out. It says Barning has the ability to knock down shots from the perimeter while also scoring underneath, but not necessarily as a post-up guy. His length can cause some problems on the defensive end and gives him the ability to guard multiple positions. Given the depth the Mountaineers have on the wing, it's unlikely that Barning will see a ton of minutes this season, if any. The plan could be to redshirt him and spend the next year learning the system and speed of the college game. Now, I looked to try and find his recruiting rankings on both Rivals and on 24/7 Sports. I could not find him. Could not find him listed anywhere. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're trying to move him from 26 to 25, or I don't know if he's not even on the radar. Was this young man completely off the radar of the recruiting services? If that's the case, one of two things are happening here. Either Coach Ross Hodge and his staff are reaching for this young man, or he's one of those players that might be better than his ranking or classification. He attended Archbishop Carroll High School, somewhere in that Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, is my understanding. He also, like I mentioned, he played it for the Team Durant in the Peach Jam, which is, a very well-known event for travel teams, AAU teams. Some of the highest, basically your best AAU teams in the country play in that event. And he averaged 9 points a game, but did have a 29-point game in that event. So, he can score it. I watched a few quick highlights. He's a high flyer. He's very athletic, very long, can jump out of the gym, can play above the rim. He can shoot it. I don't know that that's his number one thing. Like Skylar mentioned in the article, he's not necessarily a post-up guy, but he's good at scoring around the rim on alley-oops, dunks, putbacks, those types, scoring in transition, those types of things. So, I don't know a lot about this player. I am excited to see what he can do. The fact he's reclassifying tells me he's likely going to be a little bit younger than a lot of the other guys in his class. And the fact that we didn't know a whole lot about him tells me he's probably been flying under the radar. He may be a developmental guy, like Skylar said. Amir Jenkins was the other player that reclassified, but Amir Jenkins was a top 75 player, or at least top, I think it was top 75-ish player in the 2026 class before he reclassified. So he was definitely on the radar. He was being heavily recruited, and West Virginia was able to grab him. But this makes 4 freshmen now that'll be coming in for West Virginia. I mentioned Amir Jenkins. They're also going to have Jaden Forsyth, who's a freshman, and they're going to have DJ Thomas, who's another freshman, to go along with Evans Barning Jr. So the roster is now full. Hodge went out and got a 6'8" forward who's athletic and long and hopefully can wreak havoc on the defensive end. Will he be able to, play right away? I have a feeling he won't, but you still need a full roster for practice. You still need a full roster for guys who can develop. And you never know. This young man could end up being a very good basketball player. But that's the news of the day on recruiting front. Again, I'll leave a link to Skylar's article. And my partner, Jonathan Martin, is also working on an article right now for our site over at wvsportschat.com. I recommend you go check that out as well. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about in this episode was the schedule release for Mountaineer basketball that came out today. And this is their non-conference schedule. It's their full non-conference schedule. But I'll be honest with you, I have it's probably, I wouldn't say it's a major concern, but I do have a little bit of concern. But I'm worried that they're not going to be able to get, based on the schedule, I'm worried that they're going, if they don't have a really good year and win 20 plus games, I'm worried that they won't get into the NCAA tournament once again. Because last year, we all know the controversy surrounding it, right? And how they got left out and got passed up by North Carolina. And most people seem to think that was because they had 3 teams on their schedule that they had beaten who were around 300 or worse in the RPI. And they had 19 wins, and they had a tougher schedule than North Carolina. But having those quote-unquote gimme games, I don't know what else to call them, on your schedule could have hurt them. It really could have hurt them. And that's what a lot of people chalked it up to, that, hey, you can't have those types of games, at least not that many of them on your schedule. When we look at the schedule that's come out for this year, there are just as many of those types of games on the schedule. This is your schedule. For those of you who may not be able to see it, or for those of you who might be listening, they have an exhibition game against Wheeling. Then they start the season against Mount St. Mary's. Then you look at then they play Campbell, then they play Lehigh, then they have the backyard brawl against Pitt. So they do start the season with 4 straight home games because Pitt is coming to Morgantown this year. Then they play Lafayette. Then they go to Charleston to play in the Charleston Classic against Clemson and either Georgia or Xavier. So there's some tough opponents. Then they have Mercyhurst, Coppin State. They have the neutral site game against Wake Forest in Charleston, West Virginia. They have Little Rock. They have Ohio State in a neutral site game. I think it's in Cleveland, Ohio. And then they close out the non-conference slate against Mississippi Valley State. So when you look at this, I mean, the first good thing, they play no true road games in the non-con. No true road games. They play a neutral site game against Ohio State, a neutral site game against Wake Forest that will be more like a home game because it'll be in Charleston, West Virginia. And then they play the backyard brawl at home, and then they play the Charleston Classic at a neutral site in Charleston, South Carolina. So that's the positive here. I do love the fact that they play no road games in the non-con. So that's a positive. But when you look at the strength of schedule here, I'm going to look at some of these teams, tell you what their RPI was at the end of last season. Mount St. Mary's had an RPI of 104. Campbell, 255. Lehigh, 303. Lafayette, 309. Mercyhurst, 299. Coppin State, 355. And that's out of 363 teams. Mississippi Valley State, 363. Little Rock, 213. Now, when you look at the Power 4 teams on the schedule, Wake Forest was at 66. Georgia and Xavier. Georgia was at 45. Xavier was at 62. They won't be playing both of those teams. They'll be playing only one, depending on who wins. Clemson was 17. Pitt was at 116. So even Pitt was pretty low. But those are Power 4 games, and they are valuable. Now, The average RPI. Now, this again, this is last season. I get it. It's hard to judge this season based on last season. But when you look at, but what else can we go by, right? When you look at last season, the average RPI of West Virginia's non-conference opponents going into this year, 193.8. So barely below 200. That's not good. So let's look at last year's non-conference schedule. Last year's non-conference schedule, their average RPI, the way it finished the year, and of course this was actually real information here, 156.9. Some of those teams like Mercyhurst, they played last year. I already mentioned them. They played Bethune-Cookman last year, who was at 229 in the RPI. They played UNC Central, who was at 319 in the RPI. They played UMass, which was 240 in the RPI, and Iona, which was 211 in the RPI. Now but they had Gonzaga, who was at 25. They had Louisville, who was at 16. They had Arizona, who was at 22. Remember, they played them in the tournament in the Bahamas. Georgetown, who you thought would be, a tough opponent, they were at 157. So when you look at the non-conference opponents, last year's schedule, at least on paper, was tougher. And they actually won some of those games. They beat Gonzaga. They beat Arizona. They still didn't get into the tournament. Now, part of that was because of the way they played in the Big 12. They struggled in the Big 12 down the stretch. But some of that, too, had to do with their weak non-conference schedule. And when you look at this year's, it's even weaker. And they had to add a couple games to it because they actually are playing 2 less games in the Big 12. Last year, the Big 12 experimented with a 20-game conference schedule. This year, they're going back to an 18-game conference schedule. So West Virginia better play good in the Big 12 this year. Because if they don't, and they struggle like they did last year, they don't win, 20, 21, 22 games, they won't make it to the NCAA tournament, I don't think. Not based on this non-conference schedule. Now, you should rack up some wins, but they have to beat all of these teams they're supposed to beat. They have to beat them all, hopefully soundly. They need to pick up wins over these Power 4 opponents, especially the Pitt game at home. You need to win that one. Hopefully you can win both, if not at least one game in the Charleston Classic, and beat Wake Forest in Charleston. You have to win those games. You could probably afford to drop the Ohio State game, maybe one of the games in Charleston, but outside of that, man, you better win all those games in the non-conference because the Big 12 schedule is going to be brutal. Now, I like the way the Big 12 schedule lines up for West Virginia, and I actually did a video on that already, and I'll link to that here at the end. But it's a tough one. We know how good the Big 12 is. So West Virginia better play phenomenal in the non-conference if they want to make the NCAA tournament. That's just my opinion. So, but I want to hear what you think about this non-conference schedule. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts? Also, let me know your thoughts about this new addition to the roster that it appears the Mountaineers are bringing in Evans Barning Jr. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Reminder to hit the thumbs up button and to get this video out to more people. Let me do my VIP member shout-outs to this episode. They are Shaggy of WV, S. Michael DeHart, Daniel Gigax, TS, and Lonnie Johansson. Thank you all for being paid VIP members here on the channel. You can be a paid VIP member by hitting the join button below, or if you don't see one on your device, go to my channel homepage on YouTube, right beside the profile photo, which is the channel logo, and hit join there. It's an easy way to support what I do here. Make a small donation every month, and you get some perks like random shout-outs. And if you're a $4.99 club level member, you also will get early access to some videos, as well as some other special things once in a blue moon as well. So anyway, again, comment, let me know what you think. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. I'm on my way to 10K. Also, make sure your notifications are turned on so you don't miss future shows. I want to thank you for tuning into this one. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf, and Q Country Roads.